C'è Maicon che chiama palla, dategli la palla a Maicon, quello c'è in gran destra, attenzione, la palla per Danielino, Danielino, un anno e 3 mesi che aspetto, un anno e 3 mesi che sto aspettando sto gol, è da maggio del 2012 che sto aspettando sto gol, Danielino, un gol straordinario,
Hello and welcome back to the fourth Roma Press podcast, the second of this season so far. I'm James Goodison, production and content manager here at Roma Press. Today we're going to be talking about the result of the weekend, of course a 1-0 win over Empoli, as well as the Champions League groups overall, as well as Roma's position in a very, very, very tough group in my opinion. And then we'll also look ahead to not only the CSKA Moscow match tomorrow, but also the Cagliari match at the weekend as well. With me are two of our regular contributors, John Solano, who of course is the creator of Roma Press. Hello John, how are you?
Hey James, hey Danny, how are you guys?
Yes, and of course we do have Daniele as well, the South African, who has managed to get his internet working for this. So welcome as well, Daniele.
How's it going, James?
Gio is, as per normal, AWOL, so perhaps he'll turn up halfway through this episode. We're unsure at the moment. We're also in a partnership with Sport Extra HD. They're the ones who do those lovely infographics on the site. Definitely give them a follow on Twitter if you're looking for more of them. And if you have any questions or want to be involved in any sort of promotions with Roma Press, feel free to email us at info@romapress.us. So with all of that stuff out of the way, let's move on to the interesting stuff, which will start with the Empoli game at the weekend. Obviously, we won that 1-0 through an own goal from the goalkeeper. A 9-goal shot hits the bar, hits the goalkeeper's back and goes in. Roma win that game 1-0. De Rossi celebrates at the end, as you may have seen on our Twitter feed. We posted the Vine, but for me, it was a sign of one of those games that if you want to be champions, if you want to win a league trophy, those are the games which you need to grind out the results. It was very interesting to see it so early on. Important to get the result. John, what do you think of the performance overall?
I agree. You can't really be too overly critical, in my opinion. I know we saw a lot of people on Twitter being pretty harsh, in my opinion, towards their performance. But at the end of the season, when you see the table and you see who's in first, they don't really base on how good your performance was on an away match in Tuscany. It just matters only that you got the 3 points. So I think that's all that matters. They got the 3 points. I don't really care how they got them, but I think being over-analytical as to regards as to how they played, I think it's pretty foolish, especially if you consider Roma over the past 3 to 5 years. Winning those away matches against the Provinciale has always proven to be a tall order for them. So I think winning this match was big. It was sort of like a trap match, if you want to call it that, just because a lot of people seem to be looking ahead towards the Champions League. But 3 points, onwards, upwards.
There was a lot of criticism on Twitter, as you said, specifically over the front three. Obviously, in foresight of the Champions League game tomorrow, we decided to rest Totti, Gervinho, and Iturbe, and instead play Laic, Florenzi, and Destro. Destro, of course, and certainly Florenzi and Laic as well, seeming to be sort of maybe the future of Roma. But they had relatively poor performances. There's no real way around it. What do you think was the problem with that, Daniele?
Well, to be honest, I think I don't like to play Laic against the provincial sides because I don't know what it is, but he always seems devoid of ideas, and I'm not sure playing on the wing is actually suiting him either. So yeah, I suppose it was our second choice front three, and because of that, you have to understand if we don't blaze teams 4-5-0. But yeah, I expect better from them. I mean, all three are better than anything Empoli have, but also when you're playing against a team like Empoli, who are going to sit back and defend deep, and these provincial sides often have fields which are actually narrower than the pitches at the San Siro, at the Juventus Stadium, at the Olimpico. So for a team like Roma, who does depend on a lot of width, to play on such a narrow pitch and to play against teams that, I wouldn't say Empoli parked the bus, but they were definitely defensive when Roma had the ball. So, like John says, a win's a win, especially against these kinds of teams, which are where Scudettos are won and lost, getting the points against these kind of teams. But yeah, it wasn't a great performance. Roma haven't played that well this season so far. I mean, the first 45 minutes against Fiorentina was very good, but since then haven't been amazing. But I suppose this game against CSKA Moscow is one of the biggest of the seasons because of what it could do for morale either way, win or lose.
Yeah. Just to build off what Danny said, I think this whole case with Yacht is so interesting because, Danny, you remember when he arrived, he even admitted he's not a winger. He said he prefers playing right behind the striker, an attacking midfielder, a second striker. So I think it's at the point now where he's got to get over being deployed on the wing. There were times, and Giovanni pointed it out, and once he pointed it out to me, I kept noticing it. But if you watch, Ashley Cole kept making these incredible overlapping runs, and Yacht kept cutting into the middle, and he just didn't find Cole. It was incredibly frustrating because there were 4 or 5 instances where Cole was wide open on the overlap, and Yacht just kept looking towards the middle. He wasn't even looking to play the ball out wide. So it's almost like a year in, and Yacht still doesn't look even slightly comfortable with Garcia's tactics. And I don't know if that's a case of him just being stubborn, or him, or if that's something on Garcia where he tells Yacht, you don't have to stick to what we do normally. I find it incredibly frustrating that he puts in these poor performances against teams that are just devoid of talent, and he's not able to put his mark on the game. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that, Danny? I mean, he doesn't look comfortable at all on the wing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would much rather see him playing behind a striker, but I don't know if we have a spot for him there, because I suppose that's kind of Pjanic's role. Pjanic a bit deeper than a trequartista, and I suppose if Pjanic is injured, then you'd give it to Uchan. So he doesn't really have a place in the team. So either he learns to play on the wing, or we find a solution there, or else he's not going to get many minutes this season.
Do you think perhaps the problems with, as you were saying, Cole making those runs and being ignored by Leitch, do you think that's more, rather than a problem with Leitch's adaptation to tactics? I know he had a relatively poor game, but do you think it's possible that it's just the fact that, it's going to take a while for perhaps the other players to get used to Cole, get used to what he does, get used to the kind of player he is, and perhaps in a couple of weeks, because really it's only been 2 games in now, with an international break in between as well, which seems stupid to me. But do you think that could just sort of change over time rather than it being something bad about Leitch's play?
I hope it changes, just because to me, Cole, he adds sort of a peace of mind at the back. He's sevenfold the player defensively than what Dodo or Balzaretti is. So for me, I feel like Yacht should feel a lot more comfortable with Cole, just because he has to track back. We saw it was a problem last season with Yacht's lack of tracking back to help out defensively. But I think with Cole in there, he doesn't necessarily have to feel that he has to do more work at the back, just because Cole is so much better defensively than anything Yacht had behind him last season. So Yeah, I guess everyone will have to adapt to the way Cole plays, but I think it's more conventional than any other left back that they've seen. I mean, they used 5 different players at the position last season. So I think maybe it will take some time, but something's got to give here because Yacht was just incredibly poor. He contributed absolutely nothing going forward. Can't really think of much work he did on the defensive end either. So I don't know. Somebody's got to do something with Yacht because he's too talented to keep on playing like this.
What do you think about? Laic has had a poor season last season, and unfortunately, it seems like it's going to the same way. It is still early days, of course, but with these these matches sort of coming up where he has the chance now to prove himself here, less so last year. But do you think that perhaps Roma should cut their losses and sell? What do you think of that, Daniele?
Yeah, I think we should. In the end of the season, I personally expected it to happen during this past window, but I think the failed move for Carrasco from Monaco meant that Ljajic was forced to stay in a way. I don't think he had many suitors either, maybe a few in the Bundesliga, but I think Roma should cut their losses. I mean, we got him for about 15 million euros, somewhere around there. So if we can get maybe 11 or 12 back, I'd be happy with that. But overall, he's been a bit of a letdown. So yeah.
Yeah, and especially with buying Carbonero, he's at Cesena, but I mean, he's not going to be here this season. But there's somebody waiting in the wings. He's too talented to be playing like this. It's incredibly frustrating, and you would think against a team like Empoli, who doesn't have much talent going forward or at the back, that he'd be able to impose himself a little more. But yeah, I was all for selling him over the summer. I think it was a matter of Roma not finding the right suitor at the right time. But if come January they can get 10 or 11 million euros for him, I would say sell. It's just he's playing too poorly to defend anymore. There's not really much you can say. The performances speak for themselves.
Let's move on from Laic himself, because there were, of course, two other players leading the front lines as well, Florenzi and Destro. Destro, of course, being rumoured by some English press that he might join Chelsea this summer. Obviously, didn't occur. I mean, do you think that Destro? I mean, he's a young player. He's improved massively since last season at the start when he seemed quite poor after, I think it was an injury, wasn't it? And I mean, do you think like he just didn't take his chances, or the service was poor to him over the weekend, and the same with Florenzi, or do you think they actually gave bad performances themselves?
Danny, you go ahead with this, just because I have some strong opinions on this one.
Well, you have to bear in mind I watched the game on this poor quality Russian stream, but personally, I don't remember seeing Destro getting many chances, and he's the type of player that won't be able to do much if you don't give him the chances. He's not a striker who could create chances out of nothing. So I suppose maybe that is a pitfall of having Destro instead of Totti, is that if there isn't any service, you're kind of wasting a player on the pitch, because if Florenzi and Ljajic and Pjanic aren't creating anything, he's not going to get much of a chance to score.
Right. I mean, he received absolutely no help. You would think with Ljajic in there that he'd be able to deliver some crosses into the box. Florenzi is a great crosser, in my opinion. He didn't give him anything either. I think when you play with Destro in the middle, I absolutely think you have to have one of Iturbe or Gervinho in there. They're going to draw players away from Destro. and that's going to give him the opportunity to, poach the goals that we've seen him do so many times before. I think when you have Yajic and Florenzi in there, they're just not quick enough to draw the defenders out. So I would like to see. I know, Garcia played Iturbe with Gervinho, with Totti in the middle. I would like to see Iturbe and Gervinho broken up and having one of them played with Destro, just because I think, just simply because of their quickness, they're going to be able to draw the defenders out, which I think will relieve a little bit of the pressure on Destro. Just because I think he'll easily get more chances when you see the fullbacks and even some of the center backs drawing their attention to one of those two.
Let's move on from the attacking three now and talk about Roma's midfield. Perhaps, arguably one of the most balanced midfields in Europe. And we still got Strootman injured as well, which is really something to see the depth. And obviously, again, you could kind of argue Strootman's replacement in the lineup, or even the one that Strootman would replace, Nainggolan, was again just a great player. Had a great game. Again, I mean, I don't know if it counts as an assist, but he was the one who took the shot that led to the own goal. I mean, what do you do with Nainggolan when Strootman comes back if Nainggolan keeps up this form?
That's a good question. It's a great problem to have. I never want to sell Strootman, but I do think, especially if United make the Champions League, which everyone has their own opinion on that, but I think at some point, and I think Danny might agree with me on this, that he will end up at United sooner than later, whether it's not this January, which I don't think it will be, or next summer. It'll be the year after that. But, I mean, there's going to be plenty of games, especially if you consider the Copa coming in after January. I think that once Strootman returns, you're going to see a bit more of a rotation in the midfield. I guess it all depends on what happens in the Champions League, if Roma advance or not.
Yeah, well, let's move on to the Champions League. Obviously, a very, very tough draw for Roma. If you don't know who we've been drawn with, it's Bayern Munich, Manchester City, and our opponents tomorrow, CSKA Moscow. I think it's just, it's the fact that we're in the fourth seed. It's always you're probably gonna be handed a tough draw. Always going to play one of the big ones. But I mean, that group would have definitely been one to avoid, especially with the hard second seed that is Man City. And I think you two would agree with me that we really have to win tomorrow to have much of a chance of progressing from this group. So I mean overall, what was your reaction to being drawn in this group? Because I saw a lot of split. I saw people saying, "Oh damn, it's a tough draw," and then others saying, "Well, you're going to have to beat the best, and it's good to be back in the Champions League. Playing these games is what it's all about, really." But I mean, what do you think, John?
Well, I thought the draw, I mean, obviously it sucks, especially considering the other group that they could have drawn, other than the one that they ended up drawing. But I think what's more important, and I wonder what Danny would think about this, is the order in the games in which they play them. I think starting and ending at the Olimpico is incredibly important, even more so considering who they ended up drawing. I would rather have the tough draw and have the order of the matches in which they have now rather than the opposite. I mean, what do you think on that, Danny? I mean, wouldn't you rather have tougher teams but playing your first and your last match at home rather than, like Juve losing in Turkey on the very last match against a group that wasn't as difficult?
Who is the last game at home against? Is that City?
I believe so. Yeah.
I believe it is. I believe it is against Manchester City.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I mean, Danny, don't you think it's better to have this tougher? I mean, the group is obviously the toughest in the whole thing. But wouldn't you rather have this tough group and being able to somewhat control your own destiny at home in the last match as opposed to what the opposite could be. I mean, we saw what happened with Juve last year. I mean, everyone counted them as a shoo-in to advance, and they have to go to Turkey, and they bottle it.
Yeah, I mean, we got a really tough group, but like you say, a bit of the silver lining was that we have this order, and I think most fans would agree. It probably will come down to City or Roma for second place, maybe even CSKA Moscow. But the game tomorrow is quite clearly one of the biggest games of our season, because if we lose that game tomorrow, I don't know how the squad will take it. I don't know how the fans will take it. I'm sure they'll be very disappointed. But I fancy our chances against CSKA, and I think I'd fancy our chances against Manchester City at home as well. Maybe even Bayern. It depends. It depends how well. Obviously, against City and Bayern, it depends how well our defense has gelled. So far, we've kept 2 clean sheets, but I suppose we haven't played extremely threatening teams.
Right.
And Europe is a different ball game altogether. So. Yeah, I'm not too pessimistic about the group. If we finish third, then we go to Europa League. Hopefully, we win as many games there as possible to improve our coefficient, so that we don't get put in a group like this next season. So, if we finish third, there's a silver lining. If we finish second, I mean, who doesn't want to play in the last 16 of the Champions League? And like James said at the beginning, I mean, the point of being in the Champions League is to see Bayern Munich walkouts at the Olympico against Roma. I mean, that's the whole excitement of the Champions League, is to test yourself against the best. And I'm sure a lot of other fans in Serie A will get to see how good or maybe how average Roma is when we do play the bigger teams. But I think it'll turn in our favour, and I think we'll show that we really do have a really, really, really strong squad.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted this like 3 or 4 times. I mean, some people were calling me deluded, but 10 really the aim should be 10 points. And call me crazy, but I don't think that's completely unattainable. In most of the groups last year, aside from obviously with the one with Napoli, if you get 10 points, you're likely to advance. I mean, there were groups that advanced with less than that. So I mean, if they take care of business at home in 2 of the 3 matches, you draw 1, and then if you can just steal 1 on the away from home, I don't know. Maybe I'm overly optimistic, but everyone when the draw came out, it was Bayern and City. They're going to advance. Roma will finish 3rd or 4th, which it may end up being the case, but. I mean, as I tweeted this earlier today, granted, it was 3-4 years ago, so it doesn't hold much weight now. But I mean, a Roma team with Matteo Brighi, Alejandro Rossi, I mean, they beat Bayern Munich. So why can't a team, this Roma team, which is significantly better, why couldn't they beat Bayern at home? And I think they will. I certainly believe they can win all 3 matches at home, which tomorrow we'll find out if I'm a nut or not. But I certainly think if they take care of 2 or 3 matches at home, you steal 1 on the road, and you just draw 1 at home or on the road, I mean, advancing is certainly not out of the question.
Let's briefly touch on the other group. With a Italian club in. Obviously, Napoli didn't make it, being knocked out by the Athletic Bilbao, which some of you FM players will know, and some others, of course, as well. But I mean, Juventus are stuck with Atletico Madrid. They're obviously second seed, and then they've got Olympiacos and Malmo, the Swedish team, first time in there for a number of years. I mean, you look at that group and you think, well, Atletico are going to top that relatively easily. Juventus should come second, especially with Allegri, obviously who's got some sort of some Champions League pedigree with those wins against very tough opposition before. But I mean, as part of a question, would you be cheering on Juventus for the idea of the coefficient? and maybe because of the fact that if they get through, that will help a Scudetto challenge. Although, of course, Roma may be in the Europa League, which might even be worse off for them overall. I mean, what's your view on it, Daniele?
Quite simply, no, I won't be supporting Juventus in the Champions League. I'll be hoping for them to drop to the Europa League and then hopefully dominate that to improve Italy's coefficient. Even if they went to the last 16, I don't think it would necessarily hinder them in the Scudetto race, because we've seen in recent times how many teams have been able to win trebles. We got Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and Inter Milan, who have all done it in the last 5 years, so it didn't seem to hinder them. So I'm not sure that Juventus going further in the Champions League will hinder them domestically. But yeah, I just can't find it in myself to cheer on Juventus.
Yeah, I'm the same. And Danny actually wrote a great piece on this about the coefficient. And I mean, Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it advancing in the Europa League? I mean, it virtually gets you the same amount of coefficient points as if you were to advance in the Champions League, right?
Yeah.
I think, isn't it, you get points for the games you play, so you like Juventus themselves / Italy earn points for, if they beat opposition. Isn't that it? Or is it where their final standings are as well? Do you know what I mean? As in, if Juventus played, for the sake of argument, Benfica, or Juventus played, who was it, Sevilla in the final last year, and Juventus lose that game, Sevilla obviously gain coefficient for winning that game, but then do Sevilla have a bonus on the fact that they actually won the game themselves? I don't really particularly understand it.
Danny?
Well, I can tell you that for Champions League or Europa League, you get 2 points for a win, and 1 point for a draw. And if you reach the last 16, the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, or the final of the Champions League, or the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and final of the Europa League, you're awarded a point for each of that.
Okay.
Right.
So even if Juventus aren't getting any points for getting into the last, I think it's the last 32 of the Europa League,
yeah,
where they would have got a point for reaching the last 16 in the Champions League, I think Juventus would make that up in playing more games in the Europa League and winning more games. They're more likely to. So
Okay.
I think
That's what I thought.
In the grand scheme of it, I think Juventus would get more points in the Europa League
And
than in the
it's
Champions.
right, and it's that reason why Italy has been thrashed in the coefficient, because we have teams like Udinese, Napoli, crashing out super early.
Torino this year as well look likely they'll be like that as well.
Yeah, there's no way Torino's going to advance. They've been throttled.
It's Inter Fiorentina, isn't it? And Napoli. Inter Fiorentina and Napoli.
Right.
Yeah, and then you look at the country like Spain, who have 82 or almost 83 coefficient points. Second place is England on 69, so that's a big gap already. And that's because Spain win the Champions League and they win the Europa League, and their teams always do well in the Europa League, and their teams always do well in the Champions League.
Yeah, and if you look at the history of the coefficient, even when Inter won the treble in 2010, Italy gained virtually no ground in the coefficient, because if you look that year, Italy again did incredibly poorly in the Europa League.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I would say that Italy are quite far away from losing another Champions League spot. Correct me if I'm wrong, France also get 3 teams into the Champions League. Am I correct?
I think so. Isn't it?
They get 2 and then 1 qualifier, exactly like Italy.
So, you're right.
So Italy would have to drop below Ukraine or Netherlands, who have almost half the points that Italy do. So we'll have 3 places for quite a long time. We're still quite a way off Germany, which is about 13 coefficient points away. So for now, that's why I see this time period as a time to we have security, knowing that we'll have 3 places for a long time. So we should use this opportunity to build up against Germany, which is still 13 points away. But if we focus more on Europa League, we'd be able to do it.
Would this be the season for it? Sorry, John. Would it be the season for that to happen? I mean, Fiorentina already a bit shaky. Lost Giuseppe Rossi again. Napoli, perhaps that's probably the one that will probably go for Europa League, with Benitez wanting to sort of get some sort of European thing out of it. Torino look incredibly poor, probably going to crash out, and then you've got Inter as well. I mean, would this be the year they'll actually try? I don't know. I mean, John, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. It's going to have to be something where it's just not one season. It's going to have to be 2, 3, 4, 5, where Italian teams just say, we're going to take the Europa League serious. We're not going to crash out and throw our youngsters in there. I mean, a few years ago against Slovan, I mean, Roma virtually played almost a Primavera team. I think this is a year to go for it, and I think they have the right teams to do it. Even though Fiorentina, they've looked really poor the first 2 weeks of the season, I think Montella will go for it, and I also think Napoli will go for it. I think this year they're going to have to carry the weight, and I actually see Inter going for it because they've built up their depth over the summer, and to me they look pretty formidable. So if I were them, or if I was a betting man, I would say that most of the Italian teams are going to go for it. And like you said, James, I just think Torino is going to be the only one that crashes out fairly early, which wouldn't surprise too many people just because of everybody that they've sold. But in order for Italy to gain those coefficient points back, it's going to have to be something where it's done for 2, 3, 4, 5 years straight, not just a one-off, hey, let's go for it this year sort of deal.
Yeah, and I would say the incentive as well is that doing well in the Europa League also improves your club's coefficient, which would mean if Napoli did well in the Europa League and if Inter did well in the Europa League, it would improve their coefficient to the degree that if they did finish third in the league at the end of the year, they wouldn't get a group of death next year because they might be Napoli could move maybe to second pot, maybe Inter, I'm not sure exactly, but maybe Inter could even move to pot 1 if they did really well in the Europa League. So I think there's that also for Fiorentina as well. If they wanted to try get into the Champions League, the incentive of doing well in the Champions League is to improve your European standing and avoid groups like Roma have been dished out.
Right, which is exactly, which is why Roma got screwed this year, because if you look at their Europa League history the last 2, 3 times they've been in it, I mean, they've done horrible.
Yeah. I mean, let's move on to the match tomorrow night, maybe today if you're listening to our podcast. But CSKA Moscow, obviously the game that we really need to win if we're going to have a chance. I think that's pretty much been established. Let's talk about the lineups, for example. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think De Rossi is suspended, isn't he? And
yes.
And is Castan injured? What about Manaus?
Castan, obviously the people listening to this will know long in advance, but I've seen now that Castan hasn't been named in the squad for tomorrow's game. Gervinho is in there, so he's come. Apparently he had a little bit of a niggle, but he's managed to overcome that. But yeah, so I think the big ones would be Castan and De Rossi.
Yeah, Castan was not called up. So Manolas is there. I don't know if he'll start or not. I mean, Danny, do you think he should start just because of how much he played over the weekend?
Is this Manolas?
Right.
Well, the only other option, I guess, would be to have a centre-back pairing of Astori and young Mbiwa.
Right, and, which I don't see happening.
No, I'd be a bit worried about that as well. So I would play Manolas and Astori, I suppose. But I'm a bit disappointed to see Astori get so much game time, actually. I know it's probably a mean thing to say, but I was really banking on Castan being fit for this game.
Right. I'm not a fan of Astori. I was there were several reports yesterday that said the back line will be Maicon, Manolas, Astori, and then actually Torresidis at left back. So I wonder if that'll happen, but I doubt, in my opinion, that would happen. I mean, wouldn't you think he'd play Cole or Holibas there?
I think he'd go with. I assume he would go with Cole because it's quite a big European night. So I'd rather want some defensive a surety. I think I'd rather play Holebas in in Serie A against some of the weaker teams where we need to create overlaps. But yeah, I would go with Cole.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I think that back line. I'd worry about giving Yango and Bira as well his start against CSKA Moscow Champions League. Bloody hell, like first game. I think that'd be a bit. I think that'd be a bit of a risk. I think just gonna have to go with the story and suck up the fact that we need, Castan's not fit yet, and sort of that's it really. I mean, perhaps counteract that with the midfield. Lots of talk about starting Keita, of course, because De Rossi's out, obviously. So, I mean, would you agree with that? The midfield of, I mean, what would it be? Keita, Pjanic, and probably Nainggolan. Those
yeah,
three.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think Keita provides the most cover. I mean, the only other midfielder besides the ones that you named that was called up was Paredes. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have to go with Keita in the middle, Pjanic on the right, and then Nainggolan on the left. And then I think we'll see the front three from Fiorentina with Totti, Iturbe, and Gervinho.
Yeah, no, that seems the most likely lineup. And I mean, yeah, the midfield as well. Obviously, De Rossi. Is De Rossi only suspended for one game, or is it more than one?
Just one.
What was that
It's only
from?
one.
Last time or something?
Right, yeah, just one.
He elbowed, I think it was Dario Serna, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Shakhtar Donetsk, and he served it was a 3-game ban, but he served 2 of them in a Europa League qualifiers under Luis Enrique, I believe.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. With Zeman returning to Rome at last, and that was actually brought up by Roma Club Philadelphia. I mean, what do you think about it? What do you expect that to be like when he returns?
I don't think he'll get too much of a hostile welcome back. He has said some odd things within the last month, and even in the early stages when he was hired by Cagliari. He said just this last week, he said he had a good relationship with everybody at Roma, which, if you read the stories from that season, you'll know that that's not true. In my opinion, it should be an easy win, an easy 3 points, especially given his defensive ineptitudes. Well, I mean, wouldn't you think it's an easy 3 points, Danny, regardless of who they play?
Yeah, but I still have that Cagliari hoodoo in the back of my head. But yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, even if because I would assume that with who they put in the lineup tomorrow, there's going to be quite a bit of turnover at the weekend. I mean, even if you play youngsters, and even if you play like Yanga Mbuya and give him his debut, I mean, I'd like to think they would still win it pretty handily. I mean, I'm just looking at the call-ups. Even if Castan isn't healthy by then, I mean, Danny, would you feel okay with Yanga Mbuya getting his debut and then the story playing next to him?
Yeah, against Cagliari at home, I mean, we should be able to beat them with any squad we play. But yeah, we'll have a fresh De Rossi as well. So if you wanted to use a new centre-back partnership, I suppose to do it, you should at least have Daniel De Rossi back for defensive surety. But yeah, you could probably, I think maybe turn the squad around a little bit, like you said, to a little bit of rotation. And yeah, overall, not too worried about it. Just that Cagliari hoodoo hanging over us, but we should be fine.
Well, you and I remember last season from the Coppa Italia, we were pretty critical of Garcia and the way he handled some of the squad turnover from match to match. So I just wonder if he has a lineup in mind already, or if he's just going to take it match by match. I would like to think with all the names that he bought this summer, just primarily for depth, that he will be using turnover a bit more than he did last season, but not as heavily, as far as he'll turn over the squad more, but maybe not as drastically. I mean, when Roma crashed out, I mean, we saw Michel Bastos at left back, which I can't envision Garcia making another mistake like that, wouldn't you think?
No, I agree. I think he's really clever, and I think he won't do it to the degree where it's detrimental. I don't think he'd rotate too much. I think, like you said, the problem is maybe he doesn't rotate it enough. I think that's what actually cost us last season with that stretch where we played Napoli in the Coppa and we had all those Serie A games at the same time. I don't think he rotated it enough. And now he has all the players at his disposal. I mean, he has 2 for every position, so he doesn't really have an excuse. But yeah, I think we saw with Empoli that he changed the whole front three. I think he showed he's willing to rotate so that he can keep the best players fit for the Champions League and fit for the bigger Serie A games.
Yeah, and really the only question I would have when he does that is there's just so many question marks as to how some of the players will perform. He kept Paredes. He bought Holibas. I mean, those are just a couple of the names that we don't know to what degree they can help the team. We've seen what Castan can do. We've seen what Cole can do. We've seen what the whole back line can do. I'm just curious to see if there is a significant drop-off when he introduces some of the new names. But I think with all these games being played, he doesn't really have a choice. I mean, some of these guys are going to have to play, regardless if there's a significant amount of question marks surrounding them.
What do you do with the front three at Cagliari? I mean, we've already been highly critical of the front three that played at Empoli, and you John talked about some sort of some changes, a breath of fresh air in the form of Gervinho or Iturbe coming in with those two, and perhaps Pjanic might need a rest as well, because I think didn't he play against Empoli as well? He's going to play tonight. So, I mean, what do you expect to happen with the front three there? But I mean, let's say without any injuries that happen tomorrow, heaven forbid.
Danny, what do you think?
Front three against Cagliari. I think you go. Well, Gervinho and Iturbe are fairly young, so I wouldn't be expecting them to be overly fatigued just by playing CSKA Moscow. So I think maybe Iturbe, Destro, Florenzi against Cagliari, rest Totti, give Gervinho a break. If things aren't going well, I think put in Gervinho for Florenzi and make it really direct. And I think with those two countering Zeman, I think we could have a goal feast on our hands.
Yeah, I just wonder where Florenzi factors in with all this. There were some rumors that by Sky Italia over this past week that he's not happy with the playing time. But in my opinion, I think Florenzi, he's one of the most versatile players. We saw he played in the preseason right back, he played in the midfield, and then he played on the wing. In my opinion, if you're going to rest Pjanic, I actually think Florenzi can fill in quite nicely as that attacking midfielder who can go forward. And Danny, I know you like him as a false nine even.
Yeah, like you say, extremely versatile. I mean, he even played a few games at right back during preseason. I know there's quite a few people on Twitter who are advocates for that. So yeah, I mean, if I was him, I wouldn't be too discouraged. I'm sure he's going to get plenty playing time either in the wing, either at right back, either at midfield. I'd sooner play Florenzi as Pjanic's sub than Jajic at this point, actually.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree as well.
I just don't know where Florenzi and Jajic factor in with all this. They're just so difficult to get a read on. But we know when you're playing with Zeman that, I mean, you're going to get plenty of counter-attacking opportunities. I mean, he commits 8, 9 men forward. So I think Gervinho or Iturbe could have an absolute feast, as Danny said, against Cagliari. So I hope to see one of them. Destro, obviously, I'd love to see. And then either Florenzi or whoever, Yacht, opposite of Iturbe. That'd be my front line.
Yeah, and just to flip that and look at the back line, because we've had a couple of questions about this. What do you think about what is Castan's condition? Amir Jafari tweeted us asking if we could give some sort of clarification on it. I mean, he's definitely out tomorrow. Is he out of Cagliari as well?
I don't think so. I think tomorrow is more of a precautionary thing. He didn't train today. He did physiotherapy. I wouldn't expect him to play. I think he'd be available, but I don't think it's worth the risk, especially considering Cagliari should be a pretty easy win. I don't think it's worth risking him.
Yeah, and then now let's go on to one of the other sort of things which have been popping up over Twitter recently, in the form of Ashley Cole. We briefly touched on it when we talked about Laich's poor performance against Empoli, but Ross Cantanzariti, I think that's how you say his name, apparently Twitter famous with that blue tick. I don't understand why. Well done to you. But I mean, like, you know, Ashley Cole's come under some sort of criticism from certain Roma fans. We were talking about it earlier, and I personally think he's been completely fine. He's been solid defensively. He's definite upgrade from last season of Dodo, however you say it. But I just I don't see, you know, I haven't seen any problems in his performances. I haven't seen any problem in the fact, you know, we've had 2 clean sheets. It's not too much of a problem. But I mean, what do you think, Daniele, about Cole?
I don't think he's at his best yet. Like you say, he's been fine, defensively solid. I don't think I only saw one reckless. I think he had one reckless pass against Empoli, but it would be very unfair to. It would be very unfair to start criticizing him on the basis of just what I mean is singling him out for anything yet. I think he's been fine, like you say, attacking, not much going forward, but defensively solid. And at this point, I favour defensively solid over attacking reckless abandon.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been completely unfair the way he's been sort of attacked by fans, especially considering the way some fans stuck up for Dodo. I just find it interesting that they're, after 2 clean sheets, I mean, he's had 2 good performances. He hasn't, I mean, you know, he hasn't been his best. I would agree with that. But I certainly think it's a bit unfair, some of the criticism he's received, especially considering if you look at what we had last season. In my opinion, he's head and shoulders above anybody who has played at left back, except maybe Torresidis.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I think he's been a good player. I don't see it as too much of a problem yet. He's definitely made no mistakes, and we've won 2 out of 2. So, you know, onwards and upwards. And of course, I mean, it's going to be difficult. Hasn't moved out of England in his life. I think we talked about this in the last episode. Hasn't moved out of England in his life. He's just picking up Italian. He's picking up new tactics, new style of play, new players entirely as well. So, yeah, I'd definitely give him some time. And also, I don't really think it's fair to criticise when the season kind of barely really started yet. You know, you come back for your first game, you're going to slowly ease back into it, and then with the way it works, you get a damn 10-day international break. I find it difficult to really criticise him as of yet, but you know, we'll see. So I mean, what do you think? I mean, have you got any other questions, John, for example?
Yeah, we got one more. Chris Coleman, he says he wants to know who we think will get the most assists in the group stages between Totti, Gervinho, and Iturbe. I'll go first. I think just because of how quick he is, I think it'll be Gervinho. The way he draws defenders and the way he finds open attackers. Who do you think?
Yeah, I'd say Gervinho, but for a different reason. I'd say he's going to be through on goal, have a shot, it will get blocked by the goalkeeper, and someone will sweep up and finish it.
That's not too far off.
Danny?
If I had to choose between those three, I'd probably go Totti. If I could choose anyone in the whole squad, I think Pjanic will get the most assists in the group stages.
Yeah, well, it'll definitely be interesting to see, and definitely going to be looking forward to the away nights in Manchester and Munich, as well as CSKA Moscow in the cold winter as well. But that's all from us. We're hoping to get this podcast out later tonight on the Tuesday night of the Champions League. Of course, it's going to be slightly outdated if you're listening to it after CSKA Moscow. We're all thinking that Rudy Garcia's side will get a win, and we're hoping they do, because really without it, I don't think we're going to go far in the Champions League. So if you're listening to it afterwards, hopefully we're all jubilant at a wonderful 3-0 win, Totti hat-trick, and then Gervinho assists as well, and then of course we can move on to Cagliari and on with the push to the Scudetto. We should be back next week to discuss that game. Gio should be back next week if he actually decides to sort himself out. But from all of us here at Roma Press, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, John and Danny, for joining me as well.
Thanks, James.
Calcio di punizione. È pronto Pjanic a battere tre quarti bianconera, posizione centrale, lancerà verso l'area di rigore. Parte Miralem, eccolo il tentativo di tiro, la palla respinta, il capitano tira, gol! È il gol del bimbo d'oro! È il gol del bimbo d'oro! È il gol del bimbo d'oro! Una sassata del capitano! Mamma mia, una sassata del capitano! Questa volta nulla ha potuto a Buffon! 9 gol in campionato, 224 gol! Nordal ad un passo, il capitano, braccia al cielo, tutti i giocatori su di lui! Tutto il pubblico è impazzito, una sassata incredibile dal limite dell'area di rigore, imparabile per Buffon.